Tell me if you can relate to this. The muse strikes with an interesting new idea, you work it out in your mind for a little bit, only to have it fade in your memory hours later, and then you regret that you never wrote it down. Or you do take note of it, but when you try to track it down, it's nowhere to be found amidst your mountain of papers or apps. Well, this is something that I struggled with, honestly, for years. So one day, I started to write down more of the things that I knew I needed to internalize, kept an index of them so I could refer back to them easily, and took the time to review them on a regular basis. And little did I know that these 3 basic things were the building blocks of what's known as a commonplace book. And creating one for myself has revolutionized my life. And it might just yours too. As it turns out, there's a huge history of people who kept commonplace books. Ralph Waldo Emerson referred to his as a savings bank because they were the starting points for his essays and poems. And the list goes on. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Henry David Thoreau, Mark Twain, Thomas Jefferson,
and perhaps most famously, Leonardo da Vinci,
who carried his around just in case he needed to sketch down an idea or two.
To say the least, you're in great company.
I'm going to show you what a commonplace book is, 3 reasons why keeping one will change your life for the better, and how you can easily start your own. So a commonplace book is a physical, yes, physical notebook, more on this later, where you capture thoughts that are important to you, custom organized in a way that makes sense to your brain. And this is an incredibly powerful system. In fact, I commonplaced my way to my first physical product, the playbook, which has been one of the proudest accomplishments of my professional creative career. Having a system for noteworthy thoughts where you know where each one is placed will give you a sense of mental space and organization that you didn't know you needed before. Imagine being able to easily revisit and make connections between those thoughts. Those connections could go on to become your next logo design, essay, photo shoot concept, van life build out, whatever is the format in your creative discipline. So in that sense, commonplacing can be revolutionary for you too. So I am endlessly inspired by Marcus Aurelius' meditations. And it's important to note that it's not really a journal because he didn't write about events that happened. Instead, he wrote down insights that he learned from them. It's basically his commonplace book, just one that was dedicated to recording life lessons, which is something that I think everybody can benefit from doing. And while I am nowhere near as prolific as Marcus, I can tell you that the very act of writing them down transforms you for the positive, especially if you do it with that explicit intention. Life is teaching us all the time, but sometimes we forget those lessons and end up having to relearn a particular lesson again. So keeping a commonplace book for the wisdom that you gain along the way is going to make you more vigilant about whatever it is that you're going through in life right now and help you avoid the karma of the past so that you continually evolve as a human being, just like Marcus Aurelius did. The only difference is that he kept a record of it. Why shouldn't you? The key point here, don't just live life by default, merely reminiscing about your lessons, letting them get lost in some nebulous haze in your own head. Write that shit down. And just like Marcus did with meditations, write for no one else but yourself. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, this kind of writing, it's unsexy, it's raw. Sometimes, and in fact, I would say most of the time, it's not fun, but that's how it's supposed to be. Rather than leaning on someone else's words of wisdom, keeping a commonplace book for your own insights will finally give you a record of the man that you are becoming. So after collecting your ideas into a commonplace book for a while, there's just something deeply gratifying about opening it up to the index and seeing all the ideas you've collected over time. It allows you to notice similar themes in your ideas, release old ones that are no longer working, and most importantly, start connecting your ideas together in new ways for projects you might be working on now. this is where the creative gold lies. You know, it's sort of like that scene in Interstellar where the main character Cooper finds himself unexpectedly in the fifth dimension. In that scene, time is represented on a physical plane, inside what's called a tesseract, allowing him to navigate to any point in time that he wants to. It's important to note that the tesseract was constructed by a civilization so far advanced that they're no longer bound by time or space. But that's also their disadvantage. Because they're not bound to anything, they're unable to access a specific point in time, which they need to do in order to send a very important message to Earth in order to save humanity from extinction. They need Cooper to be the bridge between their limitless fifth dimension and the limited but physical reality of the third dimension on planet Earth. I want you to think about it this way. Your job as a creative is to bring the timeless, boundless imagination of the fifth dimension into the grounded, physical reality of the third. And you are like Cooper, acting as the bridge between these two worlds. And on the other hand, your creativity is kind of like the advanced civilization in Interstellar. It wants to come through to our physical world and is choosing you as the channel. But that translation isn't always so easy and straightforward. That's why a Commonplace book is such a key tool in this act of translation. Instead of just having your creative thoughts float abstractly in your head forever and ever, it forces you to write those ideas onto paper and eventually becomes a rich repository of your ideas in physical form. Now your creative process can become so much more kinesthetic. Which brings me to my next point. So I know what you must be thinking. Does it have to be physical? My answer to you, yes. Yes, it does. And I'm going to tell you why. In 2021, the University of Tokyo found that there was stronger brain activity in volunteers who wrote on physical paper versus on digital screens, specifically in areas of the brain for language, navigation, and visualization. Physical paper allows for tangible permanence, irregular strokes, and uneven shape, like folded corners. In contrast, digital paper is uniform, has no fixed position when scrolling, and disappears when you close the app. It's almost as if your brain knows when it's writing something onto paper. It works harder to process that experience and thus create a memory of it. And that's due to a concept that the researchers from the study call tangible permanence. And that does make sense when you think about it, right? Because pen and paper are tangible and ink on paper is permanent. Versus anything that you do on a screen just doesn't get the same kind of attention from the brain. So here's a little bit of story time for you, right? Like, I have never really been the best at remembering things, particularly things that people tell me in meetings. So after I heard about the results from the study, I started to add meeting notes to my Commonplace book. And I had a meeting a while back with a potential new client who wanted to start work on a project, but he wasn't quite ready until 2 months later. About a month had passed, and because I had written it down into my Commonplace book, I had a much more visceral, kinesthetic kind of memory of it in my mind's eye. So when I went to the note to go look up the exact date that we had discussed for the project start date, lo and behold, there it was, and I ended up sending a follow-up email to my potential new clients, who I am in the midst of signing a contract with right now. I think the researchers from the study summarize it best. Our take-home message is to use paper notebooks for information we need to learn or memorize. So for the areas in your life where you know you need more consistency, a Commonplace book can become your best friend. So what are the things in your life that you need to internalize? Well, that, my friend, is the first thing that you need to ask yourself in order to start your own Commonplace book. Step one is to choose what I call entry types. As inspiration, here's a list of mine to get you started. Insights, as inspired by Marcus Aurelius. Ideas that I want to capture before they fade away. Notes from meetings with my clients, so I'm showing up for them better. Notes from classes I'm taking because I want to soak up all that new knowledge as best as I possibly can. And eventually, you may even want to branch out and have specific Commonplace books for different purposes. For example, I started one recently for my YouTube scripts since writing them takes up a lot of space. Step two is to choose your physical material of tangible permanence, which is just a fancy way of saying notebook or index cards. Now, just because it's called a Commonplace book doesn't mean that it has to be a notebook. In fact, Ryan Holiday uses a system of index cards. If you prefer loose sheets of paper organized by entry type, then index cards are probably the option for you. But if you want something more linear with covers and is nicely bound together, then a notebook is for you. Regardless, I think it's important to pick something that you're going to love coming back to over and over again, something that entices you to grab with your hands and actually use. Basically, whatever you choose, make sure you love it. Step 3 is to set up your index and page numbers. You can manually write them in, which I've done, but trust me, this gets really tedious really fast. So get a notebook that already has them pre-printed. Unfortunately, there's really nothing else on the market that has everything that I was looking for in a Commonplace book. So I created my own that doesn't just have page numbers, but also visual cues for entry titles, entry types, and an index specific to commonplacing. And no one else rolls all of that alongside some really robust planning features. So yeah, if you're looking for something that can change your life for the better, then the Playbook for Creative Warriors is the best thing that's out there.
This is nothing less than life-changing, and I really mean that. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill day planner, okay? This gives you a guide, and you create your own goals and ways to follow them and achieve them. Quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. This is worth every penny.
Grab one at creativewarriors.life, link in the description. Now, regardless of whatever you choose for your Commonplace book, there are 2 best practices that I want you to keep in mind. The first is, be like Da Vinci and carry yours around everywhere you go as much as you can. I keep mine in my backpack alongside my everyday carry, so when inspiration strikes, I know exactly where to reach. The second is, as you write down entries, index them ASAP. It's like doing the dishes as you cook. Don't let the unindexed entries pile up on you, because the index is the key for your future self to help you navigate your Commonplace book as it grows. Don't just take notes, take note of your notes. Meaning, as you collect treasures of ideas and concepts along your creative journey, make sure to revisit those treasures time and again. And you'll start to form connections that reveal a deeper wisdom that's unique to you. And this will give rise to new insights that you can share with the world. Because it's wisdom, not just knowledge, that is the ultimate goal of a Commonplace book. And who knows, it could end up being the breakthrough that you need to create something meaningful.